Welcome to Recalculating Small Business. Like its award-winning book, Recalculating is dedicated to small business in America. Your hosts are Don Mazzella and Dan Perkins. Don Mazzella is the editor-in-chief of the Small Business Digest. Dan Perkins is a registered investment advisor with 43 years' experience in managing money.
Dan Perkins here, your co-host, along with Don Mazzella of Recalculating for Small Business. Our radio program is dedicated to you, helping the small business owners increase their profits. We draw our name from Recalculating, voted the best small business book of 2017 by the Independent Press. In this book, it features ways to grow your small business. Now, here's Don Mazzella.
My co-host, Dan Perkins, is on assignment, but we're lucky enough to have Skyler Madison with us today. Skyler is a very unusual woman who's launching her own radio program as a platform for her offerings. Skyler, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Very unusual woman. I like that.
Well, you are. Skyler, for our audience, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, about your platform. I love it that you call it a platform, and then also your website.
Okay, thank you. So my most recent accomplishment and what really is generating, this forward momentum that I'm doing, the Creative Writer's Way, is the PhD that I just completed in Jungian and archetypal psychology. And it's really been an interesting, quote-unquote, journey for me. I mean, I started out when I was young wanting to be an actress. And I didn't realize that what really fascinated me about it was story. And I didn't think I could write, and then eventually I didn't think I could act, or I didn't have the persistence. So I went in a completely different direction, and you're not going to believe this. I mean, I landed on Wall Street, of all things. And I remember when I was working there, it was like, this would make a great movie. And it was literally right before Oliver Stone came out with Wall Street. And I was kind of trying to find myself. And eventually I landed in around, I would say, 2000, starting the Skyler Madison Center for Wellbeing in New York. And that was really dedicated to helping people break unwanted habits and achieve a healthier lifestyle. And that really is where I refound myself, so to speak. And that was the momentum to move into getting my PhD, for additional credentials. I'm a perennial student. I love learning. And then what I did my dissertation on, which is essentially the psychology of the creative process, is really what's behind bringing me full circle back to what I love, which is stories and helping people to write their stories, find their voice in the creative realm, not nonfiction, although, I can speak on that too. And so there is this sense of just this. The Creative Writer's Way is a journey. It's like a hero's journey, and that's what I'm going to be teaching in my workshop in Malibu coming up in November. It's going to be very exciting. It's a perfect place to have this kind of workshop, right?
Go ahead, keep going. You're telling us more. So tell us about the workshop, and then I'll start to ask some questions.
Okay. So the workshop is called What's the Story? And really that's the fundamental thing. And this happened to me as well when I was writing. I'm also a fiction writer. And as part of my dissertation, I wrote a screenplay, which is actually being turned into a television series. We're in the process of getting that done. It's entitled Breaking Down, and it's set in a healing center, an avant-garde healing center, dealing with issues that we have today in our culture and society, addiction and, and all that stuff, and how it's not really treated right. So that's going to be the television series. But while I was writing that, I realized how much I love to write, and it was through what I was working on in my dissertation that enabled me to get the idea and complete the idea, which is really the critical thing. But also, you have to have the story. The story is really what is the forward momentum in actually being able to do this. And the next thing that I'm writing is a fiction book that is historical fiction that's set back in the time of Freud and Jung. And when I was writing it, I realized that I didn't really have the story. Who is the protagonist? What do they want? Who is the antagonist? What is the conflict? How do they learn something and resolve it? And how does that resolve the whole story? What we do sometimes as writers is we fall in love with certain scenes without really having the backbone of the story, which then becomes the engine that propels the whole momentum to bring you from idea to completion. And so that's what we're going to be teaching. I'm going to be teaching it along with Joe Fontana, who is my husband, and he is here in LA with me as a producer. He also went through the PhD with me, and both of us are what we would call second half of life, new career, or really what it is the original career being manifested in the second half of life. Because oftentimes what happens is that we don't necessarily know who and what we really are, and we don't necessarily pursue our true passions. We kind of do what the culture, oh yeah, I'll be an accountant, I'll be a banker, doctor, dentist, and I can pretty much tell you that there's very little, I think, offered to young people to help them find what is your true vocation and how can you bring that forward. And that's another thing that I'm passionate about.
Well, since this is a program about small business and marketing, the reason I asked you on the program is you've decided, A, to build a website, B, to create a podcast, and 3, to really create a platform. And I found that fascinating. So can you tell our audience what you mean by a platform and how you're going about doing it?
Yes, absolutely. I will also like to circle back to when I did the Skyler Madison Center for Wellbeing in New York. It was hugely successful. I mean, I started literally from zero, and I was grossing $1 million within a couple of years. And this was just essentially coaching services. And how did I do that? Well, first of all, I had a problem that I was solving that was pretty specific, and a way of solving it that a lot of people hadn't really considered: hypnotherapy, NLP, a lot of alternative types of things, modalities, so to speak. But I found a market that I could reach through New York Magazine, and I consistently ran ads in New York Magazine. They were very, very successful. But then as things started to change and less people were reading magazines, and so your ads, the traditional way that we would market would be through advertising. That started to kind of dry up, and the response was not the same as what I had originally generated. And I had to start looking at how else I could reach people. And that was really the beginning of the explosion of this whole way of reaching people through social media, your platform, I mean, I had a website from the beginning, but now it's YouTube videos, and publicity's always been important, and that's a whole other thing in terms of having a message that's relevant today and trying to get it out there. But today, more than any time ever, it's this capacity to get your message out in a digital fashion, whether it is, like I said, through social media, through Facebook ads, through having a group, through networking, and taking your message. A platform is really, what is your message and how can I get it out there? And being consistent about it. So first you have to find your message and then deliver content. So, for example, with me, I set a goal to have a blog post every week, and that's just, you just have to commit to it. To do a video once a month that I would put on my YouTube platform. To take this material that I'm doing and then funnel it out through my social media, and all of these things are the route, so to speak, that enable you to get the word out there today. So it used to be you could just run an ad. Today you have to be a content deliverer and have an interesting message with consistency. And I think that's a really important word in anything that we want to do. Because just the other day I pulled out a book that I had read years ago that I thought was just brilliant, but somewhat misunderstood. And it's Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. And basically the word rich, I think, was a little bit, maybe an editor told him to use that. But really what he's talking about in the book is the secret of how to make anything successful. And it starts with having an idea and having a burning desire. So, and that's part of what I teach in the creative process, because it's the same thing. You start with an idea, and then it becomes a burning desire. When it becomes a burning desire, it activates what he called back then, and what we call in depth psychology, the creative imagination, the creative unconscious. And that becomes your partner in your process, kind of synchronistically helping you to manifest this, giving you ideas when you're least expecting it. You wake up in the morning, all of a sudden you get an idea. Oh, yeah, I should do this or that, or bringing the right, it's what Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss and the doors will open. But most importantly, focus and persistence. So even when you're writing a story, if you're writing a novel, it's the focus and persistence and having that story spine, that I spoke about in the beginning, that actually helps you to write the story. So it's not really that much different from taking an idea if you are wanting to launch a small business and having that burning desire, focus, persistence is the secret to success.
We're talking with Skyler Madison. What great advice. Skyler, your website for our listeners?
Is Skyler Madison, and that's spelled Skyler, Madison.com. Thank you.
Okay.
And,
let's get back. What you describe is Steve Jobs to a T, and other successful people. But the interesting thing is they tend to be egomaniacs in many respects, and according to the new book by his daughter, someone who really was not really nice to people. And how do you deal with that?
Well, it's so interesting that you brought that up, because I was actually thinking of writing an article objecting to that book, that memoir that she wrote. And I'll tell you why. Because when you look at Steve Jobs' biography, and a lot of biographers are like psychologists, all that really was going on, well, not all, but one thing that was going on with him was that he had what we would call in psychology a complex. He was adopted. That sometimes does something to the person. And, my parents didn't want me. And he was also adopted by, apparently the father, from what I read, was an abused person from his father. And so sometimes this can carry through. And so there was something in Steve's psychology that perhaps he hadn't totally dealt with, in addition to the brilliance that was going to come later, that made him, not able to show love for whatever reason. In other words, he had this repetition. Freud called it the repetition compulsion, where he was in effect repeating what his birth parents did, and he didn't acknowledge his daughter. Now, I understand that might have been painful for her, and I'm sure it was. But if I were writing the memoir and I hadn't written it, for me it would be all about how I overcame this. How this suffering that my father perhaps wasn't able to overcome completely, I overcame it. That's what we're looking for in writing a memoir or in a story or in our life. Our trials and tribulations, how do we overcome it? Now, I personally can't say that creative geniuses have this, kind of like you called it egomaniac. I would call it more their ego is suffering. There's something that in their personal psychology that they have a wound. And maybe you could say that the wound drives the success, maybe. But there also is a lot of research that shows that people that are highly creative are somewhat neurotic. I don't know if I totally believe that, but let's face it, it's all about having a drive to succeed. And if you're neurotic or if you have a compromised ego, you might kind of do what we call overcompensation by, having that drive that's critical for success, if that makes sense.
You're making great sense to people. I want to talk more on this point. How did you go about, you're doing a blog program. What made you decide to do that, and how are you doing it?
Okay, so the whole thing is content and having some information to share with people that's valuable. Why would they want to follow you? Why would they, it's about information and helping people through that information. So I had a lot of content that I created from this 400-page dissertation I wrote and all the research I did that went into that dissertation. And that became my platform in a way because I felt I had a lot of really interesting things to share with people about the creative process. And as you can see from what I'm saying, the creative process applies to anything that you want to do. It's not just about writing a novel or a television series. That's just one iteration of how creativity can play out. It's about anything the word create is about anything that you want to bring forward that doesn't exist. And it's the same process. So I made a commitment to myself now that I have this burning desire of what I'm being focused on to deliver content on a weekly basis that's meaningful to people, that's helpful, that's based on the information that I've gleaned. I'm also an incurably curious person, incurably curious, which is also an aspect of creativity, being curious. And so I love to learn. I'm still taking classes. My husband criticizes me about that, but you have 2 master's degree and a PhD. Do you really need to take them? Yes. I love to learn, and I love to read, and therefore I am now funneling that information in the content I deliver, and that is really, I think, fundamental to your platform. What is your message? What problem are you solving? And can you disseminate content to people that's helpful on a regular, persistent basis? And from there, that's where all the so-called magic works with, if you do it right, search engine optimization, because today you just put everything into Google. I know Donald Trump has an issue with that because he thinks it's rigged, but it's not. It's actually amazing today that you can do that. And you can just put something into Google and it comes up. And so this content that you're delivering, if you deliver it consistently in the right way, you'll come up. Okay, that's getting acknowledgement and recognition. That's like, in effect, running an ad. Because the whole thing is you want to reach your people. But you want to reach your people.
How true. We like to think on this program we reach our small business audience with people like yourself with differing views. I guess my next question is, how do you go about creating the website that you wanted to create?
Well, I used David Katzmeyer, my website designer, who's been with me since 2001 or something, through different iterations of, when everything went mobile, when you had to have it, geared towards different platforms that people would be consuming it on. Basically, what you have to do is take your idea and then deliver it, break it up in terms of just almost like making an outline. Who am I? What problem am I solving? And how can I help you? And make it, today websites, in my opinion, don't need to be that long or that complicated, but they really need to deliver the information in a very succinct way. And also, if you are looking to, quote unquote, capture leads, having something that you're offering, like a lead magnet that's complementary, that's useful and helpful for people, and is very good because not only, so you're giving them something, and in exchange they will give you their information that you can then perhaps continue to market to them. So, but the root of all of this is you're giving, and then you're receiving.
We're talking with Skyler Madison. Her website is skylermadison.com. And Skyler, spell it out for our audience.
Yes.
Please.
S-K-Y, like the sky, L-E-R.
And Madison as the last part. Now, Skyler, I'm going to take advantage of the fact that I know you to ask you about, you're very interested in innovation. And what do you mean by innovation, and how do you get to talk about it at your seminars?
Well, it's not so much innovation as much as it is creativity. Is that okay to shift it to that? I mean, I think you could say that at the root of innovation is creativity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so innovation, right. Yeah. I mean, at the root
I misspoke you. Let's call it creativity.
Okay. But, I mean, innovation is just a product that grows out of the creative process. Something comes out that's new and different. And so what I studied that really kind of blew me away was that there is a, how shall I say, a sequence to the creative process that's somewhat psychological. So it starts with this preparation stage, you know, where you're getting the idea. And look, Steve Jobs was a master at this, right? And then through this concentration and focus, persistence, burning desire that I talked about with Napoleon Hill, the idea goes into what's called an incubation stage, where it's incubating. I mean, you don't have to be thinking about it 24/7, but if you are thinking about it a lot, guess what? It excites the creative unconscious. Just like Freud said, dreams are remains of the day. Well, the remains of the day of what you're thinking about seep into your creative unconscious. And that's the root of inspiration and illumination, which is the next stage. So you don't control incubation, but it just happens naturally after you get an idea, you focus on it, and you're not letting go. It starts to incubate, and then something emerges. Oh, I'd be walking down, as I do every morning, Santa Monica, Palisades Park, and all of a sudden, I wasn't thinking about it, but an idea came up for something that I needed to add into the screenplay I was writing, or something with the dissertation, or no matter what it is that I'm focused on. It could happen when you wake up, you know, when you first wake up, all of a sudden you get an idea. You may even get something in a dream, although I don't remember my dreams that well. Some people take their dreams and interpret them. But then comes this illumination, which is inspiration. And then from there is this innovation that you spoke about, or the manifestation of the creative idea. And that's basically the root of the creative process. And so Steve Jobs, he knew it instinctively, and he was also a master at, and this is what I found, of taking walks. There's something about you leave, you know, what you're focusing on, and you just go for a walk, and you don't think you're focusing on it, and all of a sudden, boom, you get an idea. So he was a master at that, and they just, you know, did a research study at Stanford actually verifying that people tend to be more creative who incorporate something like walking into their day after they're focused on doing what their work is or what they're thinking about, you know, what it is that they want to bring forward. So I just think that it's a fascinating thing that we can apply to anything in our life. You know, even something completely different, like if you want to find a relationship, guess what? It works for that too.
Well, on that note, Skyler Madison, we have to come to the end of this fascinating time together. Your website again for people?
Thank you. It's Skyler, Skyler Madison.com. And I'm going to be offering the Malibu workshop in November 12th at the Sarah Retreat. And it's What's the Story? So anybody that wants to, excite their creative juices, they're welcome if they're in this area or they want to come here. And all of that information is on my website. And thank you so much, Don, for dialoguing with me. It's fun.
Well, thank you. We've been talking with Skyler Madison. A link to her website will be on recalculating.biz tonight, where you can hear this and every other recalculating program, past and present. And you can also, by the way, tell us the guests you'd like to hear. Skyler, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. I hope it was helpful.
Oh, I'm sure our audience enjoyed it. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Want to know more about health savings accounts for your company or yourself? Go to 2hsa.com and get a free employer's primer. Health savings accounts are a cost-effective way of offering health care benefits to your employees and yourself. HSAs build retirement funds for your employees, improve morale, and reduce your health care benefit cost. For a free employer guide to HSAs, go to 2hsa.com. That's 2hsa.com.
Marcus Lemonis, J.D. Powers, and John Scully, and 100 other presidents and experts contributed to Recalculating the book. Why did all these people agree to contribute to the book? I'm Don Mazzella, and I'm the editorial director of Small Business Digest. And for 20 years, we have been offering small business leaders information and data to increase profits. Recalculating the book was named the best small business book by the Independent Press Association. Whether you need help with marketing, staffing, finance, operations, technology, or many other subjects, they're all here in Recalculating the book. They're now available at Amazon at a reduced cost. We've also created the radio program Recalculating on recalculating.biz.
Dan Perkins here from recalculating.biz with your featured book. I want to tell you about a recent interview I had with Bob Bethel, a turnaround specialist with lots of success in small business. Bob's new book is Strengthen Your Business, Fail-Proof Strategies for Small Business. He tells us of his life successes and failures that have made him and his clients so successful. Over the years, Bob has brought 77 companies back from the brink and changed them into thriving, profitable businesses. His energy is amazing, and at 74, he proves that you can still have a great deal to give others if you just try. His suggestions are easy to understand and very helpful. One insight struck me was that most companies do not have a plan. The old Chinese proverb says, if you don't know where you're going, then any road will take you there, is true today. Bob Bethel's book, Strengthen Your Business, can be found at Amazon.com or can be ordered at your local bookstore. This has been Dan Perkins with your Recalculating.biz featured book.
Now it is time for Dan Perkins' Tip of the Day.
Dan Perkins here from Recalculating.biz with your small business tip of the day. How is your vision? I'm not talking about your eyesight, but rather, can you see the changes coming in your business or industry? The ability to see what's coming can give you an edge over your competition. Industry magazines can be a great help to see changes coming to your business. You get the magazines because you belong to a group. Use the resource of your group or association to keep yourself current. You're paying for it anyway, why not use this resource? If you keep yourself abreast of what's happening, you will be able to make the changes to enhance your opportunity to grow your business. So here's your Recalculating.biz small business tip of the day. The next time you get one of those membership magazines in the mail, sit down and read it cover to cover. You just might uncover a new opportunity. I'm Dan Perkins from Recalculating.biz with your small business tip of the day.
Welcome back to Recalculating, a program designed to help you be successful.
My co-host, Dan Perkins, is on assignment, but a lot of companies are going to third and fourth generations, or even sometimes second generation, and making that transition is always hard. We have a fourth generation individual who's written a book about moving from one generation to the other. Ramez Baassiri is here to talk about this, his book, and being a fourth-generation entrepreneur. Ramez, are you there?
Yes, I am with you. Hi, how are you, Don? Thank you for having me.
Well, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes, you did, and you can call me Ray as well, so make it easier.
Well, Ramirez, for our audience, before we go further, could you spell out your name so they know?
Yes, Ramez Baassiri, Baassiri.
Well, and the name of your book?
Interrupted Entrepreneurship, Embracing Change in the Family Business.
You're the fourth generation. What made you decide to write the book?
Yes, it's a very good question. I was really focused on the disruptions that I was feeling around me, be it in the tech space as well in the overall economy since 2008. So I was sort of seeking some answers to these disruptions. What can one do to tackle that? And the reason I put pen to paper to write a book was because my dad passed unexpectedly in the family business, and I thought, what other challenges will I be faced with other than the one of passing of my father? And I discovered a few things that transcended continents and generations. So that's the main gist why I wrote the book.
Well, keep going. Okay. So what is you started to do that? So what happened next?
Some of the research in my book focuses on other families across continents and across even centuries to see. So one of the statistics I kind of came across was the fact that most businesses are family-run businesses in the States, about 80%, all the way to looking at the Far East in Japan, it's about 99%. Another statistic, which was quite interesting for me particularly, is that fourth generations have a 3% chance of surviving. So I thought to myself, wow, I need to really seek out answers to these disruptions that can help me sort of overcome, and I can be in the 3% percentile and improve that situation. So, and that's one of the things I've sort of discovered. And then that led me into really a big question.
There. Wait, Ramez, yes. Let's stop right there.
Yes.
You mean the fourth generation has a 10% chance of succeeding?
3% chance of succeeding.
3%.
So 3% chance of succeeding.
That's fascinating. That was really that means you're going to have to overcome some big odds.
That's where the name Interrupted Entrepreneurship came into my mind, because that's a huge interruption. You're rolling in year after year, you're feeling comfortable generation after generation, and somehow it stops. And what's causing this disruption? What can you do to be able to overcome that? How can you embrace these disruptions so you can turn them into a powerful tool to move ahead?
And what did you learn?
Well, one of the things I did was, I found that people's attitude towards interruption is that they frame it in a negative way. And I thought, if you look at it in a positive way, and realize that it's just inevitable, it's going to happen, like blinking and breathing. When you have a baby, that's a big interruption, but at the same time, in most cases, it's a wonderful thing. If you see it in that light, you will be seeking a solution. And with that, you'll be able to tap into opportunities because you're embracing rather than instinctively fighting. So that was like a stepping stone. And then on that, I sort of, through more research, I found that it was also the attitude towards embracing. So you can be positive, but how positive can you be, and in what sense? And one of the things that I sort of coined was the calm, cool, and collected approach. I think of Muhammad Ali, the fighter, and how he would come into the ring and he would be ready and calm and cool and collected for the fight. And I think in any business, that's how one should be when they wake up in the morning. We should be ready to persevere, to be prepared, to have a plan, but you have to also be calm, cool, and collected. So we are all different. So we have different traits and different characteristics. So in the book, I spend some time in a couple of chapters talking about intangible and tangible assets. And one of the things is creativity, goodwill, IP, things that people sort of don't really look at, the intangible, and they seem to focus on the tangible. So if you focus on that, your leadership skills sort of improve and they start to serve some kind of a purpose. So that was a second lesson that I sort of learned going through the process of writing the book and researching. One other big thing that I sort of also came across was, we all have a plan for our business. The previous, gentleman who was talking with you just now in the interview did a very wonderful job speaking about the plan. And so I sort of dug a little bit more. We've all heard that, if you have passion and purpose for what you're doing, you'll be able to succeed better. So through some research, I felt that, knowing why you do something, the why of the what, can really go a long way in cutting through the organization and giving you sort of a focus so that you no longer make a mountain out of a molehill. And I coined that as the mass transformative purpose. So it could be for the individual, the retirement plan and how they look forward in the next 20 years or so, maybe 10 years, maybe 30 years. It could be a 5 or 10-year plan, or even a complete change. The idea is to sit down and introspect and align what we call the vision with our intended purpose, and see if those two can go hand in hand to help us see the unexpected that's coming our way. So that was also something that, I started applying in my organization because I found it to be very helpful when the organization and the team in the company is aware of what is your mass transformative purpose. And sometimes it transcends just the bottom line. It looks at the people. It looks about the community. It looks about how you can give back and get back, because in tough times you always need your neighbor to help you out more than anything else. So, your banker, your customer, your supplier. So how you can be able to build those relationships through a keyword, which is the mass transformative purpose. We all have challenges.
Well, let me ask you this then. You inherit a business now, and you're fourth generation, but there are people inside the business that are there a long time. How do they feel about the lucky genes getting the leadership and they not getting the leadership? How do you deal with that?
That is a really good question, Don. So in the book, I shared a story about how when I joined my father, the first day I came in all dressed up like I was going to a GQ shoot, and he kind of giggled a bit, sat with me, had a cup of coffee, and when we were done, I said, "Dad, where's my desk? Where's my office that's looking from the penthouse out to the wonderful views of the town?" And he laughed and giggled. He said, "You have no experience for you to actually have a desk. You haven't earned that." And he gave one instruction. He said, "You walk around any company in any branch in any division. When you're tired, you sit in front of that gentleman or lady, and they have one instruction, to teach you what they know." He said, "So pick wisely where you sit." And he said, "I'll get back to you." And it took about 9 months of me moving around from one place to the other, to change my mindset. So that at the end of the 9 months, like a pregnancy, he came to me and he said, "You see that small, dinky cubicle that's half broken in the corner? That's yours." And my attitude was, hallelujah, I have this desk. I was so excited. And that kind of sort of attitude towards, you have to have the merit to be able to earn it, is important. And in our structure also within the family is you may have inherited the share, but your experience plays a role. So you may not be the CEO of the organization. Other people who are more qualified, who are not blood related, would be better suited in taking this position. And so we've been geared up in that mentality. And I think that was a great take-home value. And I would coin it with, once he said to me, he said, it's not... it's not important the table that you have and the desk you're sitting on. It's what you bring on the table. And so I don't actually have a desk in the companies that I go to the conference room and I have my meetings there. I don't have a specific space that's given to me or that I take for myself, because I feel like you're engaging with the team. You're all at once. Many people are much more experienced and have a lot to give, young or old, and we have to reciprocate that. So in one way, we were able to dodge that thing. But in the research, I found that a lot of families struggle with that. People are there in the organization. They find that they are capped because there is the lucky club is coming in and taking over. But that's why part of this book is to kind of send the message, keep the door open. It's about the merit of the people, whoever may be inside or outside. And we've seen a lot of top executives who've moved on, from Bill Gates to even Elon Musk, to where they are taking one position and they move out of the position. The key is to keep the culture intact and watch over that the company is moving in the right direction. That's a very good question.
Well, I've seen that in a lot of companies, but we're going to get back to that. But I'm going to ask you another question. Studies have shown and analysis that, particularly in the last 10 years, that a lot of sons and daughters do not want to go into their parents' businesses, and that a lot of people 60 and 65 are selling their business because the family doesn't want to go into it. How do you address that? Or do you address it in your book? And what do you say to those people who gave up the chance?
That's a very good. I sympathize, and I do understand why somebody might not want to continue in a family business. There's a lot of positives, but there's also a lot of obligations that come with it. And if you've come into the organization straight from college into the family business, you don't really appreciate the beautiful gift that's been given to you being in a family business. If you've worked outside, there's a better appreciation. The way we tackled it, and I talk about it also in the book, is both my parents came from this beginning and said, look, we're going to take a small amount and we're going to make a fund. This fund is going to be dedicated for all your wishes and whims that you are fantasizing that you want to do, because as a teen or you're in your 20s, you have all this energy of wanting to have a lot of ideas. So without killing the chicken that lays the golden egg, let's work on the side with one condition. All your siblings have to agree together for any proposal that you're going to do. So that taught us to be able to communicate as family members with each other on an amount of money that, if lost, will not break the bank. And as time went by, we were able to take that experience and say, well, you know what now? This is a very special thing that we have in this family business. We need to keep under control, and I want to keep it going forward. With one thing that I found was interested in our specific family, but also in few others, which is every generation in my family business has done something different. And I think that that's really the key, is to give the option for the family member who's coming in to bring in their energy, their ideas, and have a chance to be able to implement it. And that's what stifles a lot of next generation family members of coming into the business. Oh, I'm in the car business, then I'm going to continue in the car business. But in reality, the technology is coming so fast and changing so fast that for the survival of the business, it's quite important to have the family member listen to the young generation. And just to wrap this point up, my father used to say it's a two-way streak. Mentorship isn't the older teaching the young only, but the young teaching the old. And I think that that creates the information that can be able to be cultivated to go to the next level. Again, it's a unique model, but it worked very well for us. So when we had the interruption with losing my father, we didn't have the downside of arguing or bickering or not having a communication skill that we've never had before, because it didn't exist. No, it existed, and we were able to switch gears and say, well, you know what, I love to do something else. Let's factor this in our next 5 or 10 years and see if that will work. And hopefully we'll see in time, if that model continues to be as effective as it has been in the last 10 years.
Okay. Do you have siblings?
Yes, I have. We're four siblings, and it's a unique situation because most of the cases of fourth generation, the numbers increase to 100 or more people. In our case, because there was a separation at one of the generations, the numbers are smaller than they might be. And that's also a de facto benefit because you only have to convince 5, 6 people, the matriarch and some siblings, rather than having to address 100 people and their representatives. So that's also something that's different.
Are your siblings in the business with you?
Yes. 3 of the 4 are in the family business, and and we work together jointly. And then all of us, including the matriarch, are all on a board that we engage and have regular meetings in this regard. And that involves also outside entities who can come in and not just mediate, but also refine the process, be it on a board level meeting or engaging with the executive team and with the rest of the organization. And the key is diversity. So if you can create diversity on your board and you can create diversity also on your team, that will be great.
Well, let me ask you this question. In your book, do you address how do you deal with sibling rivalries in the second generation?
In the book, I discuss about the fact that this is something that is there, that you have to sort of engage with it. And yes, I do share not just with siblings, but also rivalries that can exist. We can talk about people who are not in the family business, who are working as colleagues in the same department, and there's rivalry there. How do they take care of it, and how do they address that? And I sort of show that the same skills and required procedures and policies within the organization can apply within a family member versus non-family member. Maybe within family, people sort of get more heated because they know each other well, but also they can recover and patch up much faster in this regard. So I do share that. I focus a lot about the diversity of the team because I feel like, a team that has different backgrounds can create a change in the actual environment and pushes and improves the innovation process. So if you're in the family, you need to be able to have different views, but also if you are sitting down with executives or with other team members from bottom to the top of the organization, you should be able to encompass all their ideas and get the best out of it because, as we said, it's a reciprocating process.
Well, let me throw a curve at you. What do you do when the siblings don't agree and siblings, one wants to be the leader and the others, two want to be the leader? Do you discuss that, and what do you suggest?
Yes. The beauty about that is that, if you have a structure, then you'll be able to have people who can mediate that are non-family members. I think that's critical because you can't have your uncle or your aunt or coming in because they may be considered to be favoritism. Oh, I'm the favorite nephew or niece, and as a result, somebody's taking a stance. You need to have an outside entity that's part of your structure that can come and say, well, let's look at the merits of this proposal, or let's look at the merits of this person who wants to be in charge. And there has to be also a process. So when my dad was around, he looked at, what are the core competencies that each person had and developed the weaknesses in each one. So when we came together, the idea was that we all complemented each other. Sometimes, as you said, not in our case, it didn't happen maybe because of the sudden passing of my father. He was in peak health and he just passed away. But in some other cases, people can see this is coming, and then people start to sort of seek who is going to replace who. And with that, it's only mediation that works on it, or a level-headed person within the organization, within the family that says, look, I'm looking at the long-term goal. I want the business to survive. I'm not looking at the chair or the desk, go full circle to the example I gave earlier, that I want to hold on to. Because the desk may mean nothing. The chair means nothing because the business itself may be out of date, and we need to be able to be agile. And I share many examples of many family businesses in the book who took the road of hiring somebody who was not from the family, and ones who've chosen the nephew or the cousin who was not even a shareholder because he was more in tune. It takes a while. It takes a of discussions. People have to feel like they're heard. But if they're heard, people can go a long way and surprise you about how much they're willing to compromise. Or like any marriage, you have to talk about it, and then ultimately everybody will get something, but not everything.
Well, the name of your book and how people can get it?
Interrupted Entrepreneurship and Embracing Change in the Family Business. It's on Amazon. It's an audio, an ebook, and hard book. And I have a website that you can actually reach out to me. It has a blog and has also some links that can get you to the different bookstores. And it's my name, www.ramez, R-A-M-E-Z, Baassiri, B-A-A-S-S-I-R-I.com.
Thank you so much for being with us. I'm going to ask you one more question. What happens when the generation doesn't want to give way to the next generation? Do you deal with that at all?
Yes, I do deal with that also in the book, and I basically share the different models of different family members. That's one of the things about the book, is I didn't focus only about what we have done or over X number of years, of 100 years, but I looked at also other families who have done this over 45 generations. And we give different models and different examples of how they were able to either change their business, or they were able to split up, or they were able to make space so that each person had their passion taken into consideration. So maybe somebody really wanted to be a CEO, but in reality, when we came down and we studied it, they wanted to be the CFO, or they wanted to be the creative engine behind the organization. And sometimes a new position is created because it requires it in the business, and because the person is aligned to be able to drive it. So I share a number of examples that are around the globe. And very interesting to see a thread of all these family businesses, and how each chapter in the book addresses different lessons from these threads that one can take with them and be able to carry forward, for the next challenge that they might be faced with.
We've been talking with Ramez Baassiri.
Thank you.
A link to his website will be on recalculating.biz tonight, where you can hear this and every other past and future program. And you can also tell us people you'd like to hear on the program. Ray, thank you so much for being with us. It's been a real
pleasure. Thank you so much, sir.
Have a good day.
Now it is time for Dan Perkins' Tip of the Day.
Dan Perkins here for Recalculating.biz with your small business tip of the day. People are concerned about the massive hack to computer systems that took place in over 150 nations just a few weeks ago. Were you protected? So here's the tip of the day. Close the windows and doors in your computer. If the windows and doors are locked, the bad guys can't get in. And the best way to lock the windows and doors in your computer is to turn it off when you're done for the day. If you leave the computer on 24/7, bad guys can attack you when you are asleep or away. You lock the doors and windows of your home when you leave home, don't you? So lock the doors and windows of your computer. If you have employees, make sure they turn off their computers when they leave for the day. Make sure you set your computers to automatic download for system updates. That way you will always have the most recent operating system. Just turn off the computers and you'll have a new title, the head of cybersecurity for your business. Go to recalculating.biz for more helpful tips. This has been Dan Perkins with your Recalculating Small Business Tip of the Day.
Recalculating, a program designed to help you be successful.
In New York this week, 500 managers and bankers from across the fintech world met to discuss the rising use of online financial resource companies. It was the latest of a number of such concaves across the country. What does it mean for small business leaders? Speaker after speaker droned on about the funds available to grow their small businesses. Other panelists talked about the ease such companies are making the loan process. Finding the money to grow can be as short as an hour. Some speakers said the average was 3 days versus going to a more traditional banking resource, which could take up to 3 months. But as one speaker pointed out, small businesses can suffer in one way from the fintech revolution. The personal banking touch that puts the small business leader in physical proximity to the banker, that personal touch that can come in handy should growth plans not work out exactly as expected, is not there. There is an old saying, when you owe enough to the bank, you own the bank. Most banks won't let that happen, but having a personal relationship can ease some issues. Fintech bankers are about doing everything over the internet. For those times when the small business succeeds, this works great. But what happens if they don't? It's harder without that personal touch. Tell me, Dan, tell me about your latest book.
My current book that's coming out, I should say, is Why Can't Grammy Remember Me? And it's really the first book written for children between the ages of 9 and 12 and their families dealing with dementia. Dementia is a growing problem with the elderly in the United States and around the world. And we are not very well informed about what's going on, what's happening. So I wrote this book in the form of a mystery. And I have two little girls, 9 and 12, who have a magical power to seem to be able to find things that are lost. And so they go to their dads and moms and they say, we work all over the neighborhood helping people find things, and we seem to find things. And their dad says, yes, you have a magical talent to do that. And they said, we'd like to start a business to see if we can help other people. So they decided to start a business. The two girls' names are Hudson and Charlotte. And they start H&C's Lost and Found. If you've lost it, we find it. And so they build a business, and they convince the dads to build them an office and a treehouse in the backyard. And they get busy making posters and flyers trying to get customers. And their dads take them downtown, and they put them in the windows and on the telephone poles and light poles. And they go home, and first week goes by, and nobody comes. And the second week and third week, and nobody comes. They're really, really dejected. And the fourth week comes, and there's a knock at the door. And they walk over and open the door, and there's a young man standing there with one of their flyers in his hands. And he says to them, my dad says the reason why my Grammy can't remember me is because she's lost her memory. And your flyer says you find things that are lost. Can you find my Grammy's memory? Well, they don't know anything about memory. So they take his name and they go see their dads to see what can happen. And the story evolves into how they learn about what dementia is and what's going on in the body when somebody has dementia. And then they decide, while they can't find their customer's memory, they can help him build the tools to retain her in his memory. And so at the end of the book, there are about 10 to 12, 13 things that families can do together to work on to preserve the memory of Grandma and Grandpa so the generations can know who these people were. And that's the story.
What a great book. When will it be available, and how can people get it?
Well, it'll be available on Amazon.com. A lot of people who have read it, who've had moms and dads that have been stricken with Alzheimer's or dementia, tell me that they really now begin to understand what's happening in Grandma's brain. And we took a different approach. Rather than do the typical brain cross-section, I work with the artist, and we design highways in the brain. And there's a brain of one of the little girls and the brain of Grammy. They both have highways, roads, but the girl's brain, everything is green and go. Grammy's brain is full of no left turns, do not enter, stop, no right turns. So all of the messages that need to come from our brain get screwed up, and we can't function. Great illustrations, though. Wonderful illustrations.
Well, say goodbye, Dan.
All right.
Time for us to go.
Thank you for joining us. And by the way, if you didn't hear all of today's show, you can go to recalculating.biz, and you can pick up this show and past shows to expand your knowledge as becoming more successful entrepreneurs. Thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week.
Welcome back to Recalculating, the program dedicated to American small business.
We've been asked recently by a number of people, how can they listen to past shows? And if you go to recalculating.biz, you'll find a link to iHeartRadio, which will allow you to go back and listen to shows that you didn't get a chance to finish or never heard. So we encourage you to go there, recalculating.biz.
Thank you for joining us on Recalculating. We hope the information you received on today's episode was helpful to you in starting and growing your business. Please go to our website, recalculating.biz, to contact us, to listen to past shows, and see special offers. Until next time, remember, if you grow, we grow. Join us next week for more helpful ideas to make your business a great success. Recalculating, a program designed to help you be successful.